be here. Start with that. I'm incredibly honored to be here. There are a couple things that I know pretty well. That's people and horses. And I've learned a good amount from both. I grew up with horses. They've been in my blood for generations. And this is my grandmother and grandfather back in the 30s on horseback. And this is my dad showing me the ropes. And people, I've been working with them for 15 years. And when you walk into a round pen with a horse, you think you see two things, but there's actually three things. You got the horse, and you got what's not being said. And you can pretend like there's only two, but the horse sees all three always. And what I've learned is that when you walk into a relationship with anybody, with each other, with the people closest to us, and with our clients, you may think there's two things, but there's always three. There's an undercurrent. There's the unsaid. And having worked with tens of thousands of people, and now moving some of this content into the leadership space, I really got curious and have remained curious about how we create sustainable change. Because I think there's a lot of smart people in this room. I know a lot of you are in the helping profession in here, and some of you are just guests that have shown up and friends of mine, and I'm grateful that all of you are here. But what I make up is there's a lot of smart people in the room with sophisticated education, sophisticated training, and sophisticated approach. And I think a lot of times, in our best attempt to get good at what we do, we tend to over-pathologize people's processes. We tend to overcomplicate the change process. And so as I began to try to figure out how I drill down, what is it that creates sustainable change? What is it that we do with our clients? What is it that we do in our own process? There's something that I've noticed that we all have in common, that all the people that I've ever worked with have in common. We're all carrying the weight of a secret. All of us carry hundreds of secrets. Now, you may not think you have any, but scientifically proven that we all have them. And they're not all bad. Some of them are necessary. And you may think because you work in this or you're in recovery that we do the deep dive and we know how to reveal secrets. But I can tell you, from trying to figure out my personal process relationally and trying to chase my curiosity professionally, we are not immune to that process. As a matter of fact, on the professional side of our fence, especially those of you that are here in recovery, we are some of the craftiest, best secret keepers on the planet. Some of the ones that I have seen most common in working with a lot of professionals in our field and working with a lot of you on the backside of crisis. So I've seen a lot of you that have been through crisis, and a few years later you're still trying to figure out relationally, what do I do with this? How do I reconnect with myself and the people around me? How do I become anchored in my most valuable relationships? Because getting in recovery does not mean that we do relationship well. Getting trained as professionals and life coaches and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists does not mean that we do relationship well. And I've been measuring our outcomes. And there's a lot of external factors that will deliver and tell you what works. And one of the things we fail to look at most is how we do relationships. And one of the things that has absolutely launched me and launched our culture and our organization into a better place, delivering better outcomes, is taking a deep look at how we do relationships. And how we do relationships is we start to reveal places in our lives where we may be lonely, where we may not be happy, where we don't have a lot of joy in our lives. And this is a big one. Head nods if you've ever felt burned out. Or show of hands. Would it be okay if there's too many people in the room for me to do some of the exercise I had planned? I remember I tried it last year. We were in a similar room, maybe in this room, I can't remember. And I do a lot of movement. I do a lot of experiential work. And this may be good, because usually when I say that, people exit. Everything we do today will be by permission. I'm a big believer in not pushing or pull people where I think you need to go. I want to join you. And so whether you participate in anything we do today, you can just hang out and watch. But we're not going to do some of that because I remember last year was a huge traffic jam when I tried to get everybody up. So I'm going to try to do it without that. But this is one of the most common things we deal with, and we're not, in our profession alone is not just the only one. We don't typically have space to talk about when our relationship is struggling. And for some of us, it's not necessarily a secret that's hooked or attached to pain. It's that we don't dare reveal our hopes and dreams. Professionally, personally, relationally. We don't make a habit of it. We don't have a format for it. Our doubts. How many of you have doubts about who you are and who you're becoming professionally? Every day. How many of you have a format where you check in and talk about that and do inventory on that every day with your people and your colleagues? One? Good. We work together. She cheated. Thank you, I appreciate that. What's that? Yeah. There's a reason why we don't do this. And I said I've been looking at outcomes, and I think as we get healthier as human beings, we become better leaders. And we become better leaders when we become better human beings. And we become better therapists when we do both of those well. And so if you're here, regardless of your profession, what I'm here to talk to you about is saying the unsaid, speaking hard truth, and understanding the science of secrets. Because my experience is that when we lean into that process, things change and the paradigm shifts. And it may seem simple, and it may not be what you think you sat down for, because you may be looking for a new modality. And I'll blend some of that in if it helps, engage. But that's not necessarily why I'm here. I'm here to tell you personally what I've experienced and professionally what I've seen that works in people's change process. And what's worked is something I call emotional fitness. Some people call this EQ. It's not talked about or trained, at least in the States. I don't know if it is over here, enough. And I think we take it for granted. I think we assume because we're professionals or because we're in recovery and because we've explored our pain that we somehow are really good at being emotionally aware. That does not mean we're good at being emotionally aware. So I describe or define emotional fitness as power, understanding, strength, and empathy around your mood and feelings towards yourself and others. Show of hands, how many people in this room feel like you rank pretty high on the empathy scale? Meaning you empathize with people's processing pain well. Good, somewhat. Collectively as a group, helping professionals, and I'm going to package this all in there because I think those of you that are in recovery are likely passionate about people too. And if you're not in the field, you may be at some point, because that's how we all got into it. A lot of us, not all of us. If we didn't, we found out later. As a group, we rank below average on the empathy scale. Isn't that interesting? The number one tool, in some cases, required for us to be able to connect with our clients, we're below average at it. Why do you think that is?
Because we haven't done our own work.
Say that up a little louder.
Because we have not done our own work.
That could be part of it, yeah.
Because we don't empathize for ourselves.
There it is. Yeah, she said we don't empathize for ourselves because empathy is a two-way street. We do really well when it comes to empathizing with people's problems and the stuck parts of their story. When it comes to empathizing with ourselves, we don't do so well, collectively, as a group. So we struggle with compassion for who we are and who we're becoming. And one of the reasons I think that is that we get into this business a lot of times because we're hustling for this. We're hustling for connection. And this is the very thing we try to help our clients find, is connection. We're hustling for connection, we're hustling for our worthiness. And it's not just this business. A lot of times we get into the helping profession that way, we get into recovery that way, and that's why we get into relationship, is because we're starving and we're hungry for this. Well, the thing we know is that we're biologically wired for it. I love my friend Brene, how she defines it as connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, and when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. We don't mirror and model. If we don't mirror and model emotional health, we're not going to create sustained change. And that is hard to do. That is really hard to do on an ongoing basis. So what is our undercurrent? It's not what you present. It's how you go home at the end of the day. And let me tell you, as somebody who's gone home at the end of the day, having talked about and tried to deliver emotional sobriety to a whole bunch of people, and I would come home at the end of the day no happier, lonely, and exhausted. Anybody relate to that? And here we are called in some ways in a divine way to show up and take people's pain. And we get trained on how to offload it in supervision and hopefully not deal with transference and counter-transference. But then we go home exhausted, tired, disconnected. I see it. I don't just see it in our profession. I see it in all professions. People come to our place and they're just exhausted and disconnected. One of the things we do is we get around these conferences, and I'm not saying it's not important, and we try to find the latest content, or we just recycle old content, and we try to get better skills, professional skills, to deliver better services. I'm not saying that's a big part of the equation, but what I think is missing is that we don't circle up enough and put down the microscope and pick up the mirror and take a look at our own process. We don't say the unsaid. And sometimes as a profession, we struggle to connect. And then sometimes we're brilliant connectors. So how do we close the gap and how do we integrate those two? I want you to watch a quick video. There's a friend of mine who started a company that was built on social experiments. And then partnered with another guy, Rain Wilson, and they come up with some awesome stuff. So I don't want to say a lot about it, just watch it. They kind of set stuff up and see what happens.
I've seen them, but I've never been in one.
You know, I remember these small kids, black kids grew up in them.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so let's see. Okay, this is a good one. Share 3 things on your bucket list.
The first one is to go skydiving.
I would go skydiving.
Have you ever had those dreams where you're just like floating and, you know, you're flying and everything? Scuba diving is just exactly that.
Don't you get afraid of drowning or being underwater or getting attacked by an octopus or any of those things? I want to learn curling.
What is it?
Like that Winter Olympic sport.
Oh, right, where you slide the...
Yeah, and then it's like bowling and sweeping.
Find one thing you have in common. Do you play sports?
Not currently.
I play soccer, so...
Soccer?
Yeah.
Alright.
Actually, I play the drums. Do you play any instruments?
I quit everything I ever tried.
Alright.
Actually, fun fact, these are real teeth, right?
Oh my god! No, I can't wait. What?
Oh my gosh.
You don't even understand. I swear to God, I feel like someone planned this here for this reason. Describe the first time you fell in love.
Oh, I think it was kindergarten. I don't remember his name, but he was beautiful.
I was in the Navy,
You were in the Navy?
and my husband was in the Navy. long story short, before he ever kissed me or we were ever really together, he told me he loved me. 24 years later, we're more in love and we're better friends than even from the very beginning.
That's true love in its finest. Talk about someone who inspires you.
Is it alright to talk about somebody that's a religious character?
Yeah, why not? This is our pulpit. We can talk about whoever we want, right?
Jesus.
Alright.
Just my peers. They're all creative in their own ways and have their own realities and own lessons. I just grow from everybody else's as well as my own.
Martin Luther King, I think, because the fact that we're sitting in this box together is a big deal, you know.
You know what inspires me, believe it or not, is my daughter. She is everything I ever wanted to be.
All right. Talk about the experience that changed your life. Oh, that's a big one. After my wife decided that it was time that we split, I started to have a different perspective on life. I saw women differently. I saw relationships differently. I think I became more appreciative of women.
How old did you say you are? 20? Yeah. Okay. At the age of 21. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And it pulled the rug out from all my plans. It really changes the way you look at things.
Mm-hmm. My grandmother has it.
Who does?
My grandmother.
There's our comment.
We found the comment.
We found a comment.
That's why I was still here. We found the comment.
Oh, create a secret handshake. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that.
Then you go fast. So this.
And then whoever gets on top gets a flag.
Oh, now I forgot what it is.
And then like maybe a little twitch in the middle.
Mine too.
I did. All right, we did it. Awesome. I actually had a lot of fun. I was a little bit nervous because normally you don't hang out with strangers in ball pits. I just wanted to
Nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm really impressed by you. I was worried that I would start talking to you like a mom. I don't know if I did.
No. Nah, you didn't. Trust me, you did good.
I think the easiest way to do this is in this actually may make it a little more interesting because I don't want you to get up and move around because that would be a traffic jam. Just the person next to you, if you'd be willing, find your common. So find your common. I'm going to give you about, if you can do it, hold up before you get started. Here's what wait, hold up. This is an exciting group. Here's what I want to make sure we lay this ground rule out there. Your common cannot be what you do for a living. So nothing professional. There's two reasons I do that. Why? Because we're probably all doing the same thing for a living or close. But the second one is, this is one of the things that we do when we bring communities together is we ask them not to reveal their profession. Because what I typically see is that we get a lot of really good human doings. And sometimes we forget how to be human beings. And so who are you if you can't identify with what you do? So that's part of it. Is there isn't actually, if you get two people, put them in front of each other for the first time and ask them to share 1 minute each on what they do, on who they are versus what they do, it actually raises their EQ. There's a lot of EQ exercises we'll throw in, but that's part of what I want you to do. Find your common, and it can't be what you do.
What if you know the person next to you?
If you know the person next to you, it makes it a little harder. If you find a common that you don't as fast as you could to try to find your comment. Show of hands, how many people found it? Oh, a lot. All right, now down, how many have not found it yet? Okay, thanks for your honesty. How many people found that awkward? Couple, okay. Did you, the ones that felt awkward, was it someone you didn't know or someone you knew?
Somebody that
Okay. Someone you knew. Yeah? So typically there are two things there when we do that exercise that make that a little more difficult. It's when we know somebody well and when we don't know somebody at all. Because it's not typically something we do. We don't try to dive in and discover. I mean, you saw the awkwardness that happened. Most of your trained analysts, you know how to read people's body language. You see some of the awkwardness that happened in the ball pit. And you saw it start to move as it progressed along. This is why, when we go home at the end of the day, and let's say I make up that a lot of you go home to a family, and some of you may not. If you're single, you may go home. You may have close friends. Whoever you would define as your circle, your closest relationships. It's awkward to spend time in the ball pit. Just stop and slow down. It's even awkward for us because we're all moving fast. We got a lot to do. We're all, looking at the schedule. What's next? What if we slow down? It's really awkward for us in our culture because we're moving fast. We're moving fast. Everything's growing. There's such a need. The phone never stops ringing. It's really hard for us to stop and find our common. And when we don't stop and find our common, we don't connect. And when we don't connect, we don't stay anchored in our closest relationships. And when we're not anchored in our closest relationships, we can walk into the workplace like a rudderless boat. And I will say the closest relationships, our circle, are the hardest ones to stay anchored in. They're the most difficult to navigate. And so what do you guys do about that? Anybody relate to that? How many of you come into the workplace and feel more intimacy than you do at home? On some days. What we typically do is we share intimacy in the workplace and we're shut down at home, or we're shut down at home and share intimacy in the workplace. One of the two. And so what do you do when you go home? How do you connect? Who'd be willing to offer something up?
So we've got a rule that when we both come home and we're facing each other, there's no phones, no TV, no anything else. We just ask each other how the day went. Tell me your story.
How often do you do it?
Every day.
Wow. And the benefit.
It's become a sacred ritual. So.
Would you be willing to come up? Oh, thank you. Hey, Daryl Miles, good to meet you. It's yours. You just take over, actually. Sounds like you're better at this than I am. So, you said it was indescribable. And I saw you find some emotion there. And I'd love for you to take a shot with this group and describe it, because I think we're a group of people that would love and could use your wisdom and hearing it. Would you be willing to try to describe it to us?
So it's not my wisdom, it's something that I was told by one of my mentors.
Okay.
And my wife has become sort of my co-mentor. We're co-mentoring each other. And sometimes I'll come home and I'll be spent from spending time in therapy and groups and sessions and feeling just empty. And there's a part of me just wants to sit down and shut up and turn off. And because we have this commitment to each other, she's willing to step into it and say, so what's going on? And how was your day? Tell me the stories. Or I do the same thing to her. And the invitation is both an invitation and a challenge. It's like, don't you check out on me. There's been times in life when I was the one doing the checking out, and there's times in our marriage and life when she was checking out. I'm from Canada, my accent. And we've lived in Canada. She's from the States, and she moved to Canada to be with me. And we've really, really worked at this to make it as rich as possible for each of us. And I feel blessed.
And if you'd be willing, what this does for me is,
What the relationship does for me?
Yeah.
Oh, what the relationship does for me is allows me to move to London and know absolutely nobody. And for us to be able to be, this sounds so corny, the cornerstone, the rock that we each tether to. It gave, before, last year when I came to this conference for the first time, I didn't know anybody at all. And I walked out and said, hi, I'm from Canada, I don't know anybody here. And met some really great people. But to be able to do that in a strange way, I needed the cornerstone of the relationship. To be able to be here in London, away from my community and circle.
thank you. Well done. Give it a hand. The reason I ask that is because I don't think we often answer that question. I think if you were to ask us, how do you define your relationships? If I were to, again, ask you, how do you define your profession? I bet you could give me a mission statement or a vision statement or a paragraph on why you're good at what you do. But if I ask you, how do you define your relationship? That's a different question. You know, what rituals support it? Culture is defined as the ideas, customs, attitudes, and social behavior of a particular people or society. And organizational culture defines the environment in which employees work. And I'm going to tell you, this has been one of the biggest learnings that I've experienced. And I used to be driven by clinical innovation and sophistication. And it's not that I'm not, I think it's so important. But we had a deficit in organizational health and culture. We were not looking at who we were and the health of who we were becoming. And it began to trickle into the outcomes that we were providing. So a lot of people, I'll say this, we'll have people come to a program that I run, and I'll say, how was it? And they're like, it was amazing. It was great. We had this great experience. Well, could you give me any feedback on what we could improve on? Well, once we left, there really wasn't. Head nods. I'm guessing you can relate to that because aftercare is something we've all, whether you do inpatient, outpatient, private practice, we've all started our case management, we've all tried to crack the code of aftercare. How do we make it better? How do we integrate the work that you learn? How do we take the experience and put it into action? My experience is we don't unless we do. Does that make sense? You heard me say earlier, I'm a guy who was running around trying to save everybody and exhausted. And I wasn't integrating what I was talking about. And integrating what we talk about is not something we land on. Because I make up there's some of you that are probably really happy and healthy in your relationships right now and fantastic. It's something we continue to move towards. It's a process. Fitness, you heard me call it emotional fitness. That's why I don't call it EQ. I don't think it's something we check off our list. We did that work and we arrived at it. Fitness is something we do every day. It's ritual. How do we find our anchor? How do we define our relationships? Well, we defined ours by putting more emphasis on cultural statement versus mission or vision statement. How many people have a cultural statement? It's not very well known. And so you heard me say earlier, culture is the ideas, customs, attitudes, and social behavior of particular people in society. And organizational culture defines the environment in which employees work. Isn't it funny that we don't define that? We don't define how the attitudes of the people around us and how we do with our clients. That's one of the first things we do, but we often don't do it together. So what I'd like to hear from you, whether you're in private, whatever side of the business you're in, or if you're just here as a friend, you can do this on a phone because I see a lot of you don't have anything to write with. If you do have something to write with, I'm going to have you write it. But I'm going to have you take a minute, and we're going to see if you can do a quick version and write your cultural statement. Not for your profession, for your life. So if you could write your cultural statement for me, your values, what's important to you? business, but this is for you relational, your personal cultural statement. What values do you have? And remember, you can turn your editor off. So any perfectionists in the room, you don't have to get this just right. This is what, like, again, Brene would call you a shitty first draft. So go for it. Could just start to kind of wrap that up if you haven't already. We'll work on it more later. All right. Got it? Now take 20 seconds and share it with the person next to you. I'd like to hear from at least a couple people who'd be willing to share theirs.
I've just changed profession. I don't have a profession at the moment, so I wrote a very simple life statement, which was to live a life shaped by possibility rather than definition. And what I mean by that is just because the way I've been, the way I've been shaped doesn't mean I have to be that way in the future.
Nice. One more. Pass it back, Mark.
That's a behavior stretch.
Okay, so mine is to commit to be in the present, to come from my spirit, not my patterns, and to live from love, not fear.
I think somebody raised their hand right over here. These are good. Mark got his up too. Let's do a couple more.
Mine was to make time for us, my wife and I, to be open, honest and willing enough to say what we need to say in order to be who we need to be.
Would you be willing to take that a step further? I think it's really good.
Of course.
So what would that look like?
Well, it was inspired by the gentleman who spoke first, really, to have that 5 minutes even, or 10 minutes preferably, to just sit down and to say the things that maybe yesterday you wanted to say that you felt that you couldn't, to drill down into the stuff that's difficult, I suppose. But for that to be okay and non-judgmental, to give yourself that space to do that.
And then if your wife was here, what's one thing you'd want her to know?
You always reduce me to tears. That I'm doing my best. I'm really trying.
Thanks.
So I started with an I statement, and then I just wrote something
for my family, for my wife and my sons, which is that we need to be honest about what we're doing, have done, and are feeling.
And what does that look like for you?
It means having less secrets, really. Less secrets in terms of how we're living our lives, what we're feeling, maybe with my young sons what they're thinking. It is my relationship with my wife is always better if we spend time to check in about our day, what we've done, as the gentleman said, how our days have gone and what we've done, and be open about. Be open about the struggles I have. The struggles I have in staying connected to myself, really, having empathy for myself.
And then one statement that you want your kids to know, if they were here.
I love them and I'm not perfect.
Nice. Thank you. So, go. You want to go? Okay. And I'm gonna see if you'd be willing to do this. Did you see what we did there? There was a pattern. It was honesty, clarity, truth. Honesty, and then we got clear, and then we spoke truth. So if you'd be willing to kind of start at the top. Oh, you had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, in the end, isn't it just about what we were saying before, which was self-love and self-acceptance? Like, secret comes because we think that if we share that part of ourselves, the other person will not love us or accept us, or we don't love and accept us in that part, so we can't share it. Is it on these lines?
I think that's part of it. But I also think that we tend to set this out there when we get into recovery or when we try to take people through the therapeutic process. And out there are relational goals that we'll meet once we get healthy. And we feel really good about who we are. And I don't think we ever get out there. But I think we got to start here. That was a mistake I made. Was I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited to speak hard truth because I was scared to take emotional risk. Because historically, for me, emotional risk meant, as what Sam said, faceplant. And the idea is that emotional risks aren't that hard, and they're really hard. But we don't take emotional risk unless we put action into the process, and that's what we're doing. It's just small clarifications in the process that move us towards action.
Yeah. It's simple but not easy.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I want to show you somebody just asked a good question. She said, "What's faceplant mean?" That may be like a slang for just struggle, where you've had a moment in life where you really struggled and you go face down in the arena. Yeah. I want to run through this content really quickly because there's a couple more exercises and you guys are doing fantastic. But you can see there are little small, simple things that we can put into practice. And you may be asking yourself the question, this is simple stuff. I've learned this through a mindfulness lens or this lens or that lens. My belief is, as I said earlier, if we want to become better practitioners, better change agents, better helping professionals, better human beings, better leaders, it really starts with a mirror moment. And I think we do mirror moments better together than we do alone. So how rare is it for all of us to take a minute to get together in the same room as professionals, because we are moving quickly, and here we are. And what do we do with our time? Do we share what we know, or do we show each other who we are? I want you guys to know who I am, and I want to know who you are. One of the things that I use is something that I call the anchor model. And this is just a quick technique or model that we use culturally, and we use it with our guests as well, and use it with other companies. Which is the anchor model or technique is identifying and understanding the origins of your story so you don't react to current situations through a historical context. Good luck on that one, right? Sounds so simple. For us, us, I know we spend a lot of time in different ways of getting there, but you'd be surprised at how little we do that in our personal lives. You might call that triggers. But it's basically just taking a look at how historic context pops up in current reactions. And you better believe it gets into the workplace. You heard us earlier talk about creating a culture where we're moving towards organizational health, not where we arrive. It's no different than the process that you take your clients through. Organizational health means that we're willing to take risk and share hard truth and be intimate in the workplace in healthy ways. But guess what? You've got a bunch of wounded people that landed in one place that are drawn to a culture that will help you heal. That's a recipe for a mess. No, it really is. And we've learned a lot. And I've got a lot of people in other industries who say, how do we get a culture like yours? And I sometimes want to say, I don't think you want it. But I will say, I think our culture delivers, has as much to do with delivering our outcomes than any of our expertise. It's how we show up for people and how we connect, and the attention we put behind creating experience. Some of it you may never notice, but it's what we spend hours on, creating emotional safety and how we show up for the people in our lives. And what we've learned in doing that over time is it's not that we get better at doing relationship with each other in the workplace. It's that we get better when we're anchored in our relationships at home. Because we don't come to the workplace any longer trying to meet all our needs. Anybody can you relate to that? If you work in a group practice or you get hurt, you get stung by any kind of feedback? That's typically where it comes from. Anchor, acronym, authentic, nurturing, courageous, humble, open, and resilient. And these can be different for you. This is the way we define them. And I can give this to you so you don't feel like you have to write it all down. If you want it afterwards, we'll email it, and I've got it in more detail. But authentic, this is something we try. Again, it's a roadmap. I don't think we get healthy emotionally. And let me say this again. Getting in this profession and getting in recovery does not mean we get healthy emotionally. I don't think we get healthy, but I will say getting healthy emotionally makes us better at this field, and it makes us better at everything. But we got to work at it just like we got to work at our clinical skills. So we need a compass and a roadmap. And the compass and a roadmap for us has been quite simple. It hasn't been super complicated. We really tried to complicate it, but it's been simple. It's trying to just get a strategy and define who we want to be, where we come from, where we're going. Be transparent with team members and guests. Be real, be you, be honest, be ethical, and do the right thing. Nurturing, support each other, make personal relationships and families a priority. Boy, you talk about a tough one. But we hold each other accountable in the workplace. We hold each other accountable to go home at the end of the day with a little juice left in the tank. We don't always get it right. I certainly don't always get it right. But we do it, and it's incredibly important. Lead with kindness, communicate thoughtfully, give permission to have emotion in the workplace. That's another one that's really tough, because in a lot of cases, through traditional management lens and through traditional therapeutic training, we're designed to keep emotion out. And when you give permission to be, but how is it that we can sit in front of a group or an individual and invite vulnerability and invite authenticity and invite emotion if we don't give each other permission to do it backstage? That was one of the things that shocked me when I got into the field. And I kind of got into the field chasing my own story years ago, because I really was curious about the people that were facilitating mental health and giving me this whole new language, this new context of how to do life. Because I grew up in an emotionally stunted environment where we didn't know this kind of language. And I thought once I get backstage, it'll be like, we'll skip through the meadow, kumbaya. Everybody will. This group has it, and then I remember being really let down, because I went in with this expectation that you didn't put on me, I put on myself. But I went in thinking, man, the people in this field are healthy, and that's what I'm after. And then I found we're healthy and we're not healthy. We're human. That's what I found out. And there's an amazing group of people that are in this field that we're drawn to it. But rare do we get the opportunity to have some of these conversations. Give permission to have emotion. Treat all equally. Honor faith and spiritual beliefs of others. We call ourselves, we don't completely avoid it. we don't say we're faith inclusive, meaning we don't exclude people for what they do and don't believe. But keeping it completely, locking it out of the workplace, I found is very limiting for certain people. When we did some interviews on what's important for you, from a wide array of belief systems, they just wanted it to be honored and respected. Honored and respected means saying it out loud. Saying it out loud means, well, that's tough because we all got different beliefs, but it's important. I'm walking you through organizationally. If you're not identifying this, I use this personally too. So think about relationally, what's important for you to talk about. Humble, lead, and follow with humility. Follow your heart. Take responsibility for your actions and own mistakes. See others for more than their talent and jobs. That's a tough one too. Dig deep on understanding your blind spots as a leader and maintain perspective. Open is embrace diversity. Value different viewpoints, give and receive grace. Listen effectively. Lead with empathy. Seek to understand before reacting. And always be open to and invite feedback. And then resilient. Work smarter, not longer. That's a problem in our field too, 12-hour days. And that's why we put longer instead of harder. Because harder doesn't necessarily mean the same. Raise your EQ. And there's a lot we spent time on that. Embrace change. Leave work at home. Or leave work at work. Freudian slip. Gain strength and substance from hard feedback. There's a method to all these things. And you may think it's just, oh yeah, that sounds great. We spend as much time on that as we do strategic planning on how we facilitate what we facilitate. Have fun, don't take yourself too seriously, and celebrate successes. I'll show you a little advertisement that will drive this point home a little bit. The benefit.
สิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิม
So I don't know if you could read the subtitles in the back, but it said, what does he get? What does he get by being strategic and making efforts every day to be kind? He gets emotions. He witnesses happiness. We can't forget what we're here to do, but we can't overcomplicate it. And whether I'm talking professionally or personally, we're here, and for some reason we've been divinely called, whether it's our own personal story that we've gotten into recovery or whether professionally we facilitate change. We're here to deliver kindness. And that doesn't happen when we're sitting across from our client. It happens when we're at home. It happens with how we treat the people closest to us. Because when we do, we experience kindness, we witness happiness, and we receive emotions. And we don't do any of this well without access to emotions. And I'm saying this as somebody who doesn't do this real well all the time. But I'm learning to be more strategic about it. Instead of just assuming that I'll go to, and I'm not knocking our profession, that I'll go to therapy and I'll unlock where I've suppressed emotion. And I'll just walk out of there and be able to speak hard truth. And what I mean by hard truth is, hard truth can be intimacy for some of us, that can be hard. And it can be conflict for the others, and that can be hard. And the absence of both are the demise of relationships. And they're both simple and they're both hard to do. And so I've learned to be more strategic. So people say, what do you do after? We help people drill down and be more strategic. We help people put this into action because we talk about it. I'm not scared to sit across from one of you as a professional and for you to challenge. Well, I am scared about that. It does bring up fear. But I never want to leave a question. I never want to leave a conversation with somebody, no matter how positive you may be in your interaction or experience with me or the profession that I'm affiliated with, without saying, tell me where we let you down. How can we improve? I try not to do that in every supervision meeting I have. We do that with guests and clients. Because it's vulnerable to get it back. The hardest place for me to do it, where do you think that is? Oh man, how'd you go there so good with your wife? Really quick. Absolutely. Here's another simple process. I walked you through one earlier. The simple intent of writing it down. So if I were to say to you, what's the 10% you need to say? What's the 10% you leave out? You're more likely to say it if you write it down. You're twice as likely to say it if you share it with someone you trust. So, in other words, all right. Would you be willing to come up? No? So this is someone that I trust. I'm going to skip step one, just for time. I wish I wouldn't though, because I think I'd be a little bit more clear about what I need to share with you. But what I need to share with you is that I'm 26 weeks pregnant, my wife is. So I got a little boy on the way, and it's what I've always wanted. This process got me there. And here I am. You know, I've been chasing a dream and I've caught it. I don't know what to do. And I thought it would be different. I thought I'd be this far in and use all these skills that I have to be able to connect with this little boy before he even gets out of the womb. And so far, I'm frozen when I go home. And this has been, obviously pregnancy, I'm learning quickly, is hard for my wife. And I've not been as connected or supportive to her as I want to be. And I think I need to say this to her. So yeah. Thank you. That's it. So you want to thank you. That's it. Hey, hon.
Hello? Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
What's going on?
I am doing. I just want to share something. So, I especially this week, but I think for a while now. I know last night I was really short, and you wanted to connect and see how our day went. I kind of shut it down because I was whatever I said. I was tired. But I think overall, I'm not showing up for you in the way that I want to right now with where we are. And I want to change that before our little boy's born, but I want to change it now. Because I know the dad I want to be, and I know the husband I want to be, and I've just not been supportive. And I need. Well, I'm going to make a commitment to making a better effort. And what that looks like is I'd like to carve out a few minutes every day and just hear how your day went. And we make that a priority, and we call it a ritual, and we do it. A friend of mine does that, and he said it's really beneficial. So are you open to that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, honey. I love you. Can I call you back later? Can I call you later?
I'm about to go into a bad reception.
Okay. Well, you're actually in the middle of my presentation. I love you. I'll call you. Okay?
Okay, love you too.
Bye. So, write it down. I mean, our first 5 minutes may be rough after that. What the hell did you do? Write it down, share it with somebody you trust, and then this is another one, 20 seconds of courage. You notice I made the decision to pick up the phone in under 20 seconds. I think beyond that, I'm going to over-process it. And I'd love to say that 20 seconds of courage is mine, but it's not. Anybody know where it comes from? There's a movie that came out called We Bought a Zoo. A little cheesy movie with Scarlett Johansson and Matt Damon. And it's a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. But that's how Matt in the movie met his wife, who had died. That his brother had given him a mantra: all you need is 20 seconds of courage to change your life. And so we don't have to wait. We don't have to think. And I've noticed that that's helped me as an over-processor, as an analytic. Everything I taught and learned about my own personal journey was to go in and analyze and think. And there's not that there's not value in that, and then sometimes we just got to take an emotional risk and say the unsaid and speak the hard truth. Speak the unspoken. And in that movie, he was walking by a coffee shop, and there his wife sat, or maybe it was tea, I can't remember. And the commentary in the writing was, she was way out of my league. She was way too beautiful. But boy, did she was stunning. And before that narrative took off out of the station of she's out of my league, he said, all I need is 20 seconds. It's not the end of my life. So he turned back, talked to her, they got married. And so I actually was out here a few years ago, maybe speaking at this conference, and I watched that movie on the plane on the way home. And then when I got home, 2 days later, I ran into my wife. And she was there, and I saw her, same scenario, and I said, you know, I have no games. I didn't know what to say. Walk up to her, I was really clumsy and shy a lot. I could be somewhat introverted socially. And so I just started walking. I started walking right towards her, and I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And then I got from me to you, and she was with a friend with her back to me, and I was just about gone. I was like, exit stage left, get out of here, mayday, mayday. And she pulled her phone up to take a picture of the two of them, and I was like, thank you. And so I just grabbed it and said, let me take that picture. But anyway, without the 20 seconds, and then we met each other, and then this happened. And then after a few years, we 20 seconds of courage, we got engaged. 20 seconds of courage, we got married. 20 seconds of courage, and we got this little guy on the way. What? Oh, what? You have to hear what she said. We should probably edit this out, but go ahead.
I just said that only took 20 seconds.
These are two of my babies back home. I think I started with this. I think horses to me represent a combination of vulnerability and strength, and that's what both scares us and fascinates us about. And I think relationships and hard truth do the same. They represent vulnerability and strength, and it's what both scares us and fascinates us about them. One more. We're almost done. Wait. I was going to set this up some way. Here it is. This presentation didn't go like I had it mapped out. And I appreciate watching yours yesterday because you shared, you said you had it this way, but you decided to do it this way. And it was awesome. And that was permission for me today to relax and not try to come in here so polished. And do you notice how much I relaxed as I got on into it? In the beginning, I was nervous because I so respect everybody in this room and what you bring, but I was nervous and I was trying to be smart, and I could tell I wasn't connected. And then suddenly it was like, when I got connected, words started coming. And sometimes I think we have to give ourselves permission to get out of the box. Therapeutically, relationally. I want to tell you a story about these two guys really quickly. I didn't plan on this either. This one right here, her name is Secret. And she was, there was a guy that had, he was a meth dealer that had severely abused her and had, this was back home, and he not treated her feet. And so he'd ridden her to a point where her feet were completely worn out. Her front hoof was broken in half. And she got to a point where she couldn't go any further, couldn't take him anymore. And so he tied her up on a long lead and left her at the end of a dead-end drive way out in the country. And the Humane Society, which rescues animals like that, they're in those small counties, they're really overwhelmed and don't have a lot of resources, and so they have to pass on as many calls as they actually make. And so they got a phone call about this abandoned, abused, neglected horse that had been left, and they couldn't go. They didn't have the resources, they didn't have the manpower, and so they didn't go. A week later, we got the same phone call. Abandoned, abused, neglected horse, tied up left. And so this time they went out and went on the call. And when they got out there, she was already down. And when a horse is down, they're pretty much, they're gone because they have to be standing to have circulation. And so they have to have their feet and legs. She was down, which pretty much meant she was done. So they were going to euthanize her, but they decided to see if they could get her up and get her in the trailer first, so that they could take her away for proper burial. So they ended up getting her up, got her in the trailer, and surprisingly, she showed some strength. She was standing up. She was shaky. I've seen pictures of her at that time. She looked horrible, looked terrible. Best we could tell was about 2.5 weeks where she was there with no food, no water. It's a long time. So she got her in the trailer, took her back to the Humane Society, and surprisingly, she was still standing when they got there. So they decided to try to feed her and water and see if they could give her a shot. She she responded really well to that. So they put her kind of through the refeeding process, and she took really well to that. She started regaining her strength really quickly, and so quickly it became maybe a potential recovery story versus the other way. About 3 days later, in this small town, the guy who had abused her had caught wind that she was there. But this is the way small towns work in the South Americas. They caught wind he was on his way. So he was one of the loopholes in animal cruelty is if you haven't been charged, you can reclaim your animal. He was coming back to claim his horse. The ladies at the Humane Society heard he was on his way, and so they took her and hid her in the neighbor's garage. It's awesome. You can't make this stuff up. And named her Secret. And anyway, I'll move through the stories. Didn't plan on telling it, but the Secret, or the gentleman's, the neighbor's husband was a farrier, that's a profession that works on horses' feet. So he came on, started working on her feet. She did really well. Her owner ended up going to jail, and so they started rehabilitating her. And she started gaining weight rapidly, and then they got her to a place where they could move her out to an adoption rescue place for horses, and they put her out, to pasture with some others while they tried to figure out, or foster home, I guess, try to figure out how to foster her and do good care. And she improved. After she'd been there for a bit, they went out one morning to feed, and she dropped a baby. So that's her baby right here. So we call her Surprise. Yeah, so Secret and Surprise. So needless to say, I had heard this story before I adopted him, and when the guy saw me coming a mile away, he said, "Let me tell you the story." So they were in the back of my trailer. I was driving out to Unsaid before I could even say no, and we weren't ready for it. We weren't fenced for it. It just didn't make any sense to bring these two, animals home at this time. I was out looking for a very specific thing. I needed something to match the herd so we can improve our equine services. So I needed like this year-old gelding and blah, blah, blah. And I came home with a mare and a baby, a mare and a filly. And what was amazing was the filly, Surprise, she was, you could do anything to her. It was amazing. You could walk underneath her, you could touch her, you could put your hands on her. She never had imprint training, but she was so trusting of humans. And the best we can figure is that humans are what saved her life in the womb. They brought her back, and so she naturally trusted humans. And the only way the vet could explain the longevity of her surviving was that neither would have survived without the other. Mother kept baby alive, baby kept mother alive, through the abuse. So I turned these two horses loose in our small little herd, and it was back when we were much smaller, and so I called the team and I was like, "Okay, we got to build a fence today." And so we built a cross fence. We separated because we put new horses together. It's tough integrating, and we got hormones and everything. So we put geldings on one side, they're on the other. I had a gentleman show up that day for a workshop, and man, this guy had he had a significant trauma story combined with just a horrible run of bad luck. I mean, he couldn't win. I mean, one thing after the other. So he shows up that day, and he's really disconnected. He's really depressed. He's honestly pretty traumatized and pretty dissociated. So we quickly, as a team, thought, man, I'm not sure he'll be able to track or that we're going to be able to work with him. And so we may need to transfer him to a higher level of care. So we watched for a day or two. I got a phone call after these guys had been there for 24 hours, and this was on day 3 for him. And they said, "We've got a problem." This is one of my night supervisors at the time, and he said, "The baby horse that you brought home is, the geldings have crashed through the fence, and they've run her into the barbed wire fence, and she's tangled up and hurt." When a horse gets in a barbed wire fence, it usually means pretty bad. So anyway, she was, it was horrible. I was an hour and a half away, couldn't get there, it was the middle of the night. The guy that was on the ground was scared of horses, and I didn't want any of the clients near. So I was like, just keep everybody back, and we'll hope for the best until I can get there. I called several people, nobody could get there. So I get on the road, and 30 minutes into the trip, I get a phone call back from my night supervisor, and he says, "Miracle that I've gone outside, and she's fine. She's out of the fence, and she's in the round pen. She's hurt, she's bleeding, but she's great." And I was like, how is that possible? It was the guy. client woke up, middle of the night, never been around horses. He goes and gets his filly out of the fence and walks her over to the round pen head back in the bed. Okay. And so that's what I mean, getting out of the box. I learned from that moment. The next morning when I walked into the community and I told the story about Secret Surprise, and I said, there are 2 horses that we just rescued, here's their story. We hope they helped a lot of people over time. And I said, there's actually a hero in the community. And as soon as I said hero, he was sitting on the floor, and I just watched it. The first time I'd seen him make eye contact since he'd been there, and he kind of looked up at me because I was referring to him, and he connected the dots of the story I was telling about the horse. This was the horse that he rescued last night. And he looked up at me, and it was his moment. It was his moment that, again, he had found a worth and passion for living. It was like, whew. And so we gave him a coin. Everybody applauded him. It was like an honors ceremony and it turned him around. Absolutely turned him around therapeutically. Nothing we could do clinically reached him, and that did. And what we learned from that was it was out of the box, and it was an experience that if we leave room for the environment to breathe, then experiences like that can be born. When we overcomplicate, we sometimes get in the way of people's moment. This is a really cool way of getting out of the box that I want to leave you guys with. And then getting out of the box to deliver kindness, to deliver grace, and deliver healing. It's got subtitles as well, so see what you
ये मैं ये यूसुफ लौटिया याद सी मेरा लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाप बहादुर के जमाने। रोज शाम को हमने वहाँ पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ की दुकान से झजरिया चुरा के खानी।
झजरिया?
मेरा साहब नमस्ते। नमस्ते। मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली। और बेटे क्या हाल है?
Fazil Sweets?
हाँ जी।
दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।
हेलो,
यूसुफ अंकल?
कौन?
जी मैं सुमन बोल रही हूँ दिल्ली से, आपके बचपन के दोस्त बलदेव जी की पोती। याद है बचपन में आप दोनों झजरिया चुरा के खाते थे?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मिट्टी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे। एक पतंग सा उड़ता था परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था। पार्टीशन के वक्त हम रातों रात हिंदुस्तान आ गए।
दादू?
यूसुफ थी, भैया जाती। कागजों की कश्तियों में डूबा रहता था, झांकती खिड़कियों में उलझा रहता था। वो अभी क्या दौर था, मन पे न जोर था। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
भैया थोड़ा जल्दी।
हाँ जी। कौन? हैप्पी बर्थडे यारा। यूसुफ ओए, ओए यूसुफ, ओए बल्लू, ओए, यूसुफ।
I think that's it. It's simple. It's reconnecting people to what's important to them in their lives requires us to reconnect to what's important in our lives. And I think we have to get clear, we have to get intentional, we have to get out of the box and be willing to take emotional risks. We have to lean in and say the unsaid, speak the unspoken, and start with the people closest to us, because when we become anchored in them, we become better as human beings, as helping professionals, as people in recovery, and as leaders. When we get in touch with who we are and who we're becoming, that's the good stuff. That's the fun part. That's when we get to celebrate and have some fun and not take ourselves in this profession we've been called to, or this lifestyle we've been called to, as serious as we sometimes do. It's not that it's not sacred, but man, we carry a lot of pain. And boy, do we need moments like that. And sometimes we just have to get just right of center to create them. I appreciate you letting me spend time with you guys today. I took a risk today because I honestly, sometimes I think we get built up as having some kind of advanced innovation in the States that you guys don't have over here, therapeutically or treatment, because you don't have as much treatment as we have. But I've learned in getting to know you all, it's just not true. I've learned more in some of your presentations than I have back home, and I need to be honest about that. And so before coming into this, it's like, what can I say that sounds really smart and sophisticated so I can back up my arrogance? And it was like, that's crap. I want to be real, and I want to be honest, and I want to come here and take a chance and not overcomplicate this message of kindness and grace, and just spend time circling up with you guys, learning from you, and I love being here every year. So thanks for having me.